Welcome to this very special webinar with Dr. Tony Nader, The Power of Consciousness to Change Habits. I'm Chris Atwood. I'll be your moderator today. And this is part one of a six-part series associated with the release of Dr. Nader's new book, Consciousness is All There Is, that will be published on July 30th, 2024, this year. And in this webinar, Dr. Nader will be addressing the issue of how does consciousness affect the habits we create in our lives, and how do we change habits that aren't useful to us. So let me just briefly introduce Dr. Nader for those of you that may be new to him, and then I'll turn it over to him to lead our webinar today. Dr. Tony Nader is a medical doctor trained at Harvard University. He received his PhD in brain and cognitive science from Maharishi Institute of Technology. He's a globally recognized expert in the science of consciousness and human development. Dr. Nader leads the global teaching of transcendental meditation and its related programs by 120 nonprofit organizations all around the world. More than 10 million people have learned the TM technique, and more than 400 peer-reviewed studies have been published in the health, wellness, and performance improving benefits of transcendental meditation. Dr. Nader also has a deep understanding of the Vedic knowledge and Maharishi Ayurveda gained from years of working with the founder of TM, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Dr. Nader has written 5 books on the ancient and modern science of consciousness, and in his upcoming book, Consciousness is All There Is, he examines what scientists call the hard problem of what consciousness is in terms of human physiology, quantum mechanics, and Vedic science. His writings address the relationship between mind and body, consciousness, and physiology. With his expertise in brain and cognitive sciences, Dr. Nader will speak today on how consciousness creates habitual behavior and how we can effectively and easily develop useful habits or change habits that are not useful to our growth and development. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you Dr. Tony Nader.
Thank you, Chris. It's wonderful to be with everyone on this first webinar, and thank you to all those who are participating and are on this journey of consciousness, journey of life, that we are exploring today from the perspective of habits and how habits build up and how they can help us to achieve our goals, or they can be actually delaying us in a detrimental way. These habits are built in through repetitive activities, and we want to have first a big picture view of our life and where it takes us and our goals in life, because habits are part of behavior. A certain kind of behavior gets repeated. So we want to know, why do we behave? Why do we act? And we want to know what is our goal, why we are doing things. It is very interesting in a big picture to see that, of course, we want happiness, we want to flourish in life, we want physical and mental well-being, we want security, to feel secure, that we are not threatened. We, of course, want comfort and growth and success, all of these values, which all actually, as we will see as we go along the journey, get fulfilled through the expansion of our awareness, the expansion of consciousness. Because in the expansion of our awareness, we see more, we understand more, we understand where we are in our journey and where we want to go. And therefore, we also see the possibilities from a broader perspective. That is what is the basic paradigm of consciousness. In any case, all of these values of happiness, flourishing, comfort, etc., are actually experienced through consciousness. Because without consciousness, without awareness, we don't know what we are, who we are, what we are doing, or what is happening to us. And nothing means anything at all to us. So there is no meaning in life. And that is why having the big picture is really important to start with. And then we will go through the specifics of what we need to do. Because if you want to attain the highest goals, let's say enlightenment, fulfillment, fulfilling the whole purpose of life, you have to start with the goals that are available to you and the specific goals and specific actions that help you to make the first steps, the baby steps, we can say, that can become later giant steps towards fulfillment. So I propose that this discussion on this webinar be first on the level of a presentation, sharing with you some thoughts, and then I will not at this point show even slides. So you stay with me and see how you can understand personally all the points that will be presented, which means feel connected to them, feel how they purposefully or how they directly or even indirectly influence your personal life and how you see them yourself in your practical personal life. Time allowing, I will then actually summarize all of that and go through the slides, so some slides quickly, so you will have points that are visually perceived. But let's start first with just thinking about it, and you be with me on this journey about habits today. We will then ask, after that, questions. You will be able to ask questions, and hopefully we will answer them. And would like to introduce you to a very important aspect of our program, which is called Consciousness Advisor Program, in which a wonderful team has prepared what they call Super You habits, what we have called altogether Super You habits, and we'll analyze that. And then at the end, we'll have some little practice so that we have a direct experience of the value of changing habits and the different layers at which habits can be addressed and changed. But on the very big picture, let's start to say when we are talking about goals and habits and action and life, we can ask ourselves, what is the highest goal? Even though this is a very broad and absolute picture, big picture, beyond the relative aspects of our goals of happiness, comfort, well-being, security, ultimately, it is to know ourselves. Now, we will not come back to this a lot in this particular webinar, but it is important that we ask this question because ultimately, what is the purpose of it all? What's the purpose of doing something and succeeding? It has a purpose within itself, but why are we here? What's the meaning of our life? And just to put it in this broad perspective, I want to say to you, based on the research, based on the knowledge from the Veda, from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the experience of life, the analysis of different values from history, from different sages and knowers, that ultimately the whole purpose is to know yourself fully. And that is actually the purpose of manifestation itself, why we are here, what happens that brings us to be existing in this life and to evolve in this life. And this is what the book that is Consciousness is All There Is actually discusses in great detail. And to know thyself, there are two values. There is a small limited self, which is our qualities, where we are, our looks, our body, our environment, our capacities. And that is one aspect of ourself, which is true, and it's not to be denied or rejected. And there is another aspect of ourself, which is really an unlimited self. If you like to compare it to the ocean, which we often do, there are the waves on the ocean. And so there is one aspect of our reality that is being a wave in the ocean. And there is another aspect of our reality, which is actually knowing and understanding that we are the ocean itself. So the super you, if we have the small limited self and we have the unlimited self, there are two aspects, the wave and the ocean. The super you is the small self plus the unlimited self. So you recognize and acknowledge that you can be a wave in the ocean, appearing as a wave to others, experiencing yourself in some limited forms as having your limited abilities to some extent on the surface value. But then you also know you are the ocean. In the ancient traditions, and the ancient Vedic tradition, this is called Brahmi Chetana, or the consciousness of unity, of wholeness, knowing that you are everything within yourself, which means the ocean that creates the waves, and knowing that you can also be a wave, and knowing that all the other waves are also waves on the surface, but they are also part of the ocean. So what is the small self? The small self, which we recognize, is a bundle of bits of consciousness, we can call them, a bundle of experiences that we have had, experiences that our body has. And since the theme of our paradigm, of our understanding, is that consciousness is all there is, actually every part of our body, every cell of our body, every organ in our body has its own consciousness. It is actually the expression of consciousness. And all of these parts, cells, molecules, atoms, organs, complex structures such as our nervous system, they actually create their own experience of complexity, and they are a set of surface values, if you like, which are in the ocean, and they have a pattern which we call the anatomy of our physiology. And these patterns can function in different way, which means you have a physiology, you have an anatomy, a structure of your nervous system, but sometimes you act as a doctor, sometimes if you are a doctor, sometimes you act as a parent, sometimes if you are a painter, you're acting as a painter, then you drive your car, you're acting as a driver. And so we have these networks in our physiology that are activating different parts of our reality at some time and other parts at other times. And the more you activate one aspect, the more it gets easy to perform in that aspect. We know this, it is obvious when you practice something, we can always say practice makes perfect. And as we will see in habit formation, when something is repeated many times, it gets easier to do it. And that's why it is actually becoming a motivator to do it again, because it's easy and we like comfort and we like to be on an easy path. And that's how habit actually form. And there is a physiological brain correlate with this reality, where if you analyze the brain, you can see that something that is repeated, the connectedness between the different neurons gets strengthened, and, and the path is facilitated. And so these are the networks that are within the pattern of our physiology. So our unlimited self, on the other hand, is one unbounded ocean of consciousness, which is pure being, pure consciousness, and what we call the unified field of all the laws of nature. So what is the ultimate realization in life is to know that you are the ocean as well as you are the wave. Now, to know is something that we have to look at a little bit, because it also has an impact on our habits. And what is knowledge? What is experience? How does knowledge come about, and how do we experience things? We think usually there is me, the experiencer, and I'm experiencing the universe, and there are separate values there. But the experience and actually knowledge is the coming together of three aspects: the knower, which means the subject yourself. And in this case, you want to know, where are you in your journey? There is the process of knowing. That means what are the links, what is in the environment, what are the means that connect you to the objects that you are perceiving, that are in the universe, that are in the world, in your environment. And that is the aspect of the known. So there is the knower, the process of knowing, and the known, which is the object of perception. Now, the known is whatever objects come to your attention, but could also be what are the different opportunities that come to you, and what is the goal you want to achieve. So you have a perception of, I want to achieve a certain goal, and that is an object of my perception. But in order to do that, you are the knower, so you have to know where you are and what are your capacities and abilities to achieve what you need to achieve. And you have to know the environment, the means, the possibilities that are there that allow you to achieve a goal. Why are we focusing on this? It's because we have to define what habits are in a way that is simple, and how we can start modifying the habits if they are not proper, if they are not leading us to the goal. And the simple definition about habits is bad habits and good habits, but we will look at it in a little more detail. And the bad habits are those habits that prevent you from achieving the goal. And so what do you need to take care of in this case? You need to define the goal properly, which is the object. You need to know where you are, what can you do, how far can you achieve it? Do you have the trust, the confidence, the strengths as an individual to actually do it? And what are the habits, the aspects of the environment, the ways you are acting, the things that you are using in order to achieve the goal. So these three values have to come together. And a good goal comes from achieving something that allows us to grow and progress in whatever we really need to do. You know, it could be to have a healthy life. It could be to strengthen our understanding of some topic. It could be to build a company. It could be to exercise and strengthen our health. And all of these goals depend on where we are in our journey, which means our journey of life. And you will have to see this for yourself, because based on where one is, then one can know what one wants. So it is very important to start with, in thinking about habits and about action, to start by asking ourselves, what is it that we want? What goal do we want to achieve? And how helpful our habits are to make it achievable, or how other habits, which we call poor habits, are preventing us from achieving those goals. Now, there are big goals as a big picture, but to achieve the big goals, we need to go step by step. So what we want to know is to understand experience, why we experience things, how we experience them, and how they can influence our habits and our activity. See, in general, it can sound complicated. We have feelings, moods, emotions, we have thoughts, we have reactions to things, we have knowledge, we have memory, we have pleasures, comforts, whatever they are needed, feelings, sensations. To summarize this, there is something which I will call the ABCs of life experience. ABC, and then small s for the plural. A will stand for affect. Affect means feelings, mood, emotion. And B is for actually behavior. And behavior means our action, what we do, our reaction to certain things, and also, of course, our habits, which is repetitive behavior. But there is also the C, which is cognition, consciousness, cognition, and being conscious of. And this, in terms of cognition, to differentiate cognition from consciousness itself, is whatever we think, whatever we know, whatever memory we have. And this fourth part, the small s in ABCs, ABC is plural, is sensation, like pleasure, comfort, pain. Now, usually we think of these as actually separate from one from the other. We think when I think something, and then I behave in a certain way, or I can have a certain mood, or I can have certain physical sensations. But what science has discovered, and that is based on the ancient knowledge of also some of the science, of course, has been discovered recently, but the ancient knowledge had that complete understanding of the very profound relationship between these A, B, C, and S. So affect, behavior, cognition, which means how we think, the mind, and the sensations that we have are actually very, very intimately connected, can be very intimately connected. So if you have something physical happening in you as a pain or some sense even pleasure or comfort, it actually automatically has an effect on your thoughts. It has an effect on your behavior. It has an effect on your mood, on your emotions, and on your feelings. So when we see these different values, we recognize them as actually different expressions of a more profound value of reality, which we call modes of our consciousness, the mode of our consciousness, the way our consciousness is functioning and how it appears in these different modes that give us a hint of what is happening. So let's move now, having this basis, to the actual areas of relevance for habits, very directly aspects about habits. And there are three aspects that are very important. We think I can change my habits. It can be quite difficult to change your habit, but it can also be quite easy. And that is why we are having this discussion. We are having this webinar. That's why we are having also in the Consciousness Advisor program what we call the Super You habits. And these three areas that we really need to understand in order to start to have control over our habits and make them really work well are first to identify the habits. Obviously, if you want to change something, you have to identify it. You have to know what it is. And this is an area about knowledge, which means to know it. And that part is really, in terms of those ABCs that we have discussed, is related to cognition. And since all of them are related to each other and they reinforce each other in a different ways, then it's important to first go to the highest value of our human ability, which is to be cognizant, to be knowers, to be aware. So first we have to be aware, and it's very important to be aware of the habits that we have, particularly the habits that we want to change, rather than be actually on an automatic way of functioning, where there is something within us that is actually making us work like a machine, in a sense. And you can't believe how much people do things based on an automated system that is set within them, that has become like a loop of activity that keeps going on, and they think they are in control of their life, but they're actually just subject to certain subconscious, if you like. Subconscious doesn't mean unconscious. It means a different level of consciousness, a lower level of awareness, where they are just like an automaton, like an automatic functioning, and they can go actually in loops and not able to get out of it. It's like people who, for example, take the phone and check the news a million times a day, or go on these different programs, and they keep rotating, keep doing this, and then they can't be left alone for a minute, and they keep doing that. Or even people who smoke, for example, and it becomes a habit of smoking, which it's very precise, it's very determined, it's amazingly requiring the attention and make it work. On the surface level, even if they know they should stop smoking. So they are on an automatic kind of activity, and their cognitive value, their ability to understand fully what is going on and deal with it properly, is not there. Now, this might sound okay, so what to do about it? And that is the important value, is that it's not enough to just know. There are ways to know, there are levels of knowledge, and there are the other values that come into play in order to help us modify our habits and modify our behavior. But it all starts by identifying the habit. And the second aspect, we said there are 3 areas of relevance. The second aspect we want to understand is the motivation for habits. Why habits happen. And at first we can think, well, this is so bad, it must be something wrong, etc. But actually habits build up because there is something positive about them. There is a reward about them. They bring something good to us. But that reward can be, maybe you're tired and then you feel you're overwhelmed by something, and you want something easy to relax and feel comfort. And this is where the affect comes in, the feelings, the sensations, even physical sensations, or the expectations that become a reward for encouraging us to do something. The problem is that this is usually a short-term reward, short-term, which is immediate satisfaction, without having in view the ultimate goal that we want to achieve, or not even the very highest ultimate goal, but some goal that we want to achieve. Let's say you're a student, you want to study, you want to pass the exam, you want to succeed. That's not the ultimate goal of life, but it is a very important goal on the path to achieving the fullness of life. And therefore, you would want to do that. However, you find yourself procrastinating, you find yourself distracted, and you find yourself seeking short-term immediate satisfaction, be it, maybe drinking, maybe watching TV for long hours, maybe watching your games, or playing games, or watching what's going on in a loop form, all of these things on your phone, etc. And they bring you actually immediate short-term satisfaction. And if they bring satisfaction immediately, they are encouraging you to repeat them. And when you repeat them, as we said, they form a very interesting loop of encouraging and facilitating the activity. So the activity becomes simpler and as if rewarding on a short-term basis, and therefore it becomes a nice place to go, in a sense, to kind of get into this repetitive behavior. So that can be in itself something nice and positive, but it's only for a short term, and it becomes a bad habit only if it prevents you from achieving your long-term goals. So if you want to be healthy and you want to exercise, which is a longer-term goal, but you feel if you put yourself in the couch and watch TV, then it's more comfortable. There is less exercise, less action to do, and less effort to do. Then you say, well, it is better, I feel okay. So what I'm saying here is that the motivation for habits, even poor habits, is always something that has something good in it. And that's why we don't want to look at it with judgment on the overall level. We want to actually analyze it and understand it. And we want to look at its effect in terms of our long-term goals versus a short-term satisfaction. Because if you have a very negative attitude towards it, there will be a conflict in your mind because you will feel um, it is actually helping me to rest. It's enjoyable, and therefore I should, maybe keep doing it. Why not doing it? I have to fight myself, etc. So understanding that ultimately, even those bad habits, they can start with a purpose that is very uh, comfortable and has some positive effect to it. Yet, we have to understand that we can do better, that we can always grow to achieve more. And what is very important is to believe that we can do it, to believe in the change that we can do it. And we will go through that also in some more detail, how we changed habits. And that brings us to the third aspect. So first aspect was identify the habit. Second is understand the motivation behind habits and have kind of a peaceful attitude towards it, whatever, even bad habits, even though we can change them, we have to change them, but we understand why they come, we accept why they come, and therefore we're not angry with ourselves, we don't get that negative attitude, which can create inner conflict. And the third part, which is, of course, very important, is to learn how to change habits. So now we come to action and behavior and how we can change this. So before we go there, let's talk about, we said briefly about bad habits and good habits, but let's talk about 3 types of habits. And this comes to us from our experience. We know how it is, but it has been there, all of these habits and change of habits and ability to act on habits and procrastination and all of that actually has come from the ancient Vedic knowledge and tradition, in particular the yoga systems and in the teaching, for example, of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a story of a great person who has great desires for the highest good. His name is Arjuna. And it is a reality on some level, historical, potentially reality. It's also a metaphor on many, many levels of life. And that great warrior who is facing a situation where there is the fight between good and bad, and he is on the side of the good, but he also has his emotions very much high and uplifted, and his feelings, his affect, this part of the ABCs. And he has his cognition also very highly elevated, which means he sees things. He sees the value of the importance of acting in the right direction and supporting the good and preventing which is not good from taking over the evolutionary path. But he also sees that in the action, there are some things that need to be adjusted, and is taken by his knowledge and understanding, at the same time, the need to act, and also the affect, the feelings, the motivation, where he is weighing the reality of going into the fight and kind of becoming able to, if you like, deconstruct some certain aspects of reality. So there is that deconstruction, which means removing the bad things. Because in order to create something good, sometimes you have to deconstruct or remove the bad habits in this case. And he is caught into dilemma between these aspects. And this is how the teaching that comes from this Bhagavad Gita tells us to take a step away and go into the self transcend, and then you will be able to act based on profound and complete knowledge. So in that value, there is a very profound teaching, and we will see why transcending, going beyond the surface value, give us clarity in terms of the different levels of our desires, feelings, motivation, understanding, cognition, and judgment in a situation, so that we are able to act from a platform that is very, very profound and that allows us to overcome difficulties and sometimes overcome things that appear to be fine, to be nice to maintain, such as bad habits, and yet be able to overcome them because we are going to a deeper level of existence. In any case, in this Bhagavad Gita also, and in this tradition, they describe three types of habits. There is what we call evolutionary habits, and these are what we're calling the good habits that lead to growth and progress and achievement of our goal. These are called sattvic habits, that are sattva. Sattva means all that is good, that is evolutionary, that is well. And there is what we call non-evolutionary habits. These are kind of poor habits that do not allow progress, but are not necessarily regressive, which means doesn't take you back in your life. It's like beating around the bush when you have a discussion, or wasting your time rotating on things, or doing things that are not evolutionary, but not necessarily creating actually regression in your life or destruction of your life. And these are called rajasic, rajas, from rajas, which means all of these values that are going round and active and doing many things and going around and feeling that you're doing something, but you're actually doing nothing and achieving nothing really, and going round and round. That is why we need to have proper clarity of thinking when we are able to act in a proper way. And that's why cognition, this ability to know, to identify habits and understand them, is very important. So there is a third kind of habit, which is regressive habits, which is what we would call not just poor habits, but really bad habits that significantly delay or retard evolution, growth, and progress. They retard us and takes us back. So as if it's not just we're staying on the same place, but we're actually becoming worse and worse in our life. And these are habits that are called tamasic or tamas. That is the most negative kind of habits that actually destroy our life. And we see this, unfortunately, in people who become addicts to drugs, and they destroy their nervous system, and sometimes they end up in a place where nobody wants them to be, and they are not productive, and yet they have now to take time to get rehabilitated, to take time to get reorganized in their life, to actually really come back to where they were before that. It's one example, but that is an important example. And in this situation, actually, we have to understand, and it's important to go part of cognition, that there are, and we are doing this in terms of actually simply summary kind of thing. Of course, there are nuances in all of this. There is what we call levels of cognitions that are either narrow, there are, we can call medium level, and there are broad level of cognition. The narrow level of cognition is like somebody who's drowsy, confused, controlled by outer factors, has no purpose, and that is what we can call and assume that it creates bad habits. So that is also on the tamasic side, on the tamas. You can have medium level, which means awake but not alert, the vague understanding of things, a little bit unsure, a little bit irresponsible. And this is kind of what we would call rajasic. And then there is a level where there is broad comprehension, a broad level of cognition, where one is alert, is clear, is purposeful, is in control of one's life, and is accountable. They are accountable for what they're doing. And that is what is actually sattvic level of understanding, sattvic level of cognition. And if we go also deeper into this, we will find that in our analysis of our consciousness, there are different layers of our ability to be conscious. There is the surface value, and we say consciousness, often we use this example as being like an ocean, and there is the surface value of the ocean where the waves are. And as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you go to the bottom of the ocean. And as we said, we are the entire ocean. But on a habits level, on the level of discussion of habits, on the level of discussion of action and motivation and cognition, there are actually scientifically different levels of awareness. Some of them can be very surface, and that is if you're on the surface level, you only see a small part of the reality. There is something which is underneath that, which is more profound and which is not aware, it's not to the surface awareness, is not always available when we are in the daily activity and we are in a, what is called, would be called a usual kind of activity. And that is something that, as we discussed before, that motivates us, that makes us act, that makes us go into habits, often bad habits, because it is within the system, but is not available to our higher cognition. And this is really where transcendental meditation comes, which means the ability to transcend the surface and have exposure to deeper values of our consciousness and expose ourselves to a broad comprehension where cognition, the ability to see, is broadened and the ability to understand is automatically increased, and therefore naturally better habits are established, are strengthened, because there is a greater perspective of the reward over a long period of time or over long-term reward. We're no more on the surface value guarantee, acting as a wave, but we are now taking into consideration deeper values of life and deeper values of life and deeper values of life. And our understanding is bigger, our vision is bigger. And that's how we see that automatically and spontaneously people who transcend, who practice this program, actually have better habits and have better behavior. And this has been scientifically shown. In the Super You Habits program that is presented and that we will talk about in a moment, there is the ability to dive deep within the self, and they take this example of what's on the surface is only like an iceberg, that you see only the surface of it, and deep the inside the ocean is the big really part of the iceberg. Sometimes you can say 10-15% is on the surface, 85% is in the bottom. And if you want to move the iceberg, if you want to change things, and you are able only to act on that surface value, you have very little ability to make a difference. So it's important to be able to go deeper within the self. And this has been recognized in many, many approaches in the modern times, as well as it is in the old times in the Vedic tradition, because one of the teachings that are given to this Arjuna, this warrior who is between action and knowledge and between feelings and behavior and all of that is a little bit coming into a state of procrastination, can't do anything, is to say, be without the three gunas, which we just defined as rajas, tamas, and sattva. So don't be too much involved in judging them from their surface value of perspective, and go to the source and be established in yourself, and then you can see the full image, the full picture, and act properly on that. So that is the highest way of achieving change of habit, and that is by improving cognition, so that your vision, your consciousness, your ability to be conscious in a profound way leads to ability to see positive values, great values over long term, rather than short term satisfaction alone, and transcend, go beyond those little values that are sometimes very much comforting and interesting, but they don't give you the vision of the global value. Now, as we say, therefore, how to achieve that, how to do it? One thing is to transcend and transcendental meditation. But to learn transcendental meditation is very important, and many people who learn transcendental meditation, practice it completely regularly. But we have found that some people, even though they see the value of it, they get caught by habits that are not so conducive to long-term possibilities, and even that prevent them from actually practicing transcendental meditation. So what we need is also for those people, as well as for everyone else, to find a way and to have tricks and means and ways to actually achieving the goal by reducing and stopping bad habits, increasing and establishing good habits, and importantly, when you reduce or stop a bad habit, replace it by a good habit. Because what we have also seen in medical conditions and in different behavioral and psychological and coaching techniques, I have been in the cognitive behavioral area, which is a whole field now of science and understanding, which connects all of these ABCs, the affect with behavior, with cognition, and with sensation together, because they all work together, realizing that you can improve certain factors in your life and focus these values in a stepwise way, so that you actually make the change of habit very easy. So we have looked at how habits form with short-term reward, some comfort, some joy and pleasure, and how repetition, whatever, happens in terms of repeating something, it gets stronger and stronger in our life. We have a saying that whatever you put your attention on becomes stronger and stronger in your life. And that is because all these bits of awareness, these moments of awareness, they increase the connectedness in a certain way, and therefore makes it easy to do. And we've talked about neuroplasticity. Now, to come to the actual mechanisms by which we can change the habits. First, what we have to do is select a habit that is a poor habit or a bad habit, that is based on what we just understood and discussed. And also think of a goal, a positive goal that you want to achieve. Because when you change a habit, you want to replace it with something positive. We want to replace it with a habit that allows you to fulfill the goal. So we can start by baby steps, as we say. And one of the first things, again, I am staying on the cognition level, on understanding, on thinking about it. One of the things that is very important to do is to actually realize what a bad habit does to you. Now, we don't want to analyze negativity a lot, but we have to be aware what the bad habit does to you. And you can analyze this in terms of what does it do to you emotionally, so that it might give you short-term superficial satisfaction, but might make you angry, might make you, anxious about the future, might make you upset that you are not fulfilling your goals. And so understand that. Understand what it does to you physically, for example. Is it preventing you from exercising, preventing you from eating properly, from having good habits of hygiene and food and diet, etc.? Think of the health effects of that habit. What does it do to you physically and mentally? What does it do to you socially? Does it prevent you from meeting people you love or being with people you like? What does it do to you in terms of your productivity? Do you have the ability to produce things, and then the habit is preventing you from that? Limiting your ability to fulfill your long-term goals, and even if all of this is not there, but it doesn't do anything to you, so it keeps you just flat, like in the Rajasic thing, then you should see this is a bad habit. So as we're discussing this, every one of us should think of what is a bad habit that they have, what is a poor habit they like to get rid of. And so this is really important in terms of first step to realize what is a bad habit, and take this in a baby step, which means it doesn't have to be some huge thing, just habits that you feel you want to change. Get aware of all these values, and this is very important. The second thing you want to do is to have a proper mindset. And a proper mindset is to believe that you can change. You have to believe you can change. We change all the time anyway, so change is part of life. And we have the ability to change. And we have to take responsibility for change. So we have to feel empowered. Don't blame others. When your consciousness is clearer, you take responsibility. So don't feel like what is the others doing, etc. But in any case, when you analyze your poor habit, just think honestly what part of your poor habit is under your control, and if there's something in your poor habit that is related to others, and you will find that you can be in control. So take awareness in that and believe that you can change, and don't blame others, that you have the problem is because of others. Take the power within yourself and examine what are the benefits of changing the habit, and see from a conviction side, be convinced, convince yourself that it's important that you can make a change and that you can actually make the change, and think of all the good the change of habit can give you. And so think of all these points. And one more thing you can do, which is also important, you can even close the eyes and imagine if you had changed that habit since 4 or 5 years before, how better you would be by removing that poor habit and adopting a new one that is positive. That is a very important aspect of slightly diving deep within to convince our subconscious value, that value which is not on the surface value of our awareness, convince us that actually what would my life have been, what would it be like if I didn't have that kind of habit? What would I feel better? What would I feel healthier, stronger? Particularly if I change that habit into something positive. And now think of a positive habit and think yourself going forward, how will you be in 5 years, in 4 years, if you applied that new habit, that positive habit, fulfilling your goal? See, these are, on the surface value, appear to be superficial thinking about it, but it's actually very profound and very important in habit modification. And so start eliminating the habits step by step. And for that, we need some reference of how to do it, because if you think, okay, you have a big thing you want to do, it's huge and it's impossible to achieve, then you're not going to be able to do it. And so we're going to use an acronym which is often used in coaching in terms of the definition of habits and how we want to change them. So the first acronym is SMART, S-M-A-R-T, which is very often used in common coaching and all of that. And that is, when you are putting yourself with a goal, make it specific. So SMART means S for specific. Is your goal specific? Can you summarize it in a few words? Not just some vague goal, I want to be happy. That's fine, it's great, but how you want to be happy? Specific goal, what you want to do to make you happy? What makes you happy? You know, you want to become a writer, you want to have a book produced. Okay, that's a big habit. How you're gonna start, what you're gonna do specifically on next time, you know, in terms of what you're going to achieve tomorrow, what time you're gonna do that. And that is part of the T, but I said it in SMART. Now, the M is for how will you measure your progress? So measuring your progress. You have to want something specific that you can measure. You can know that you have done something. Maybe you've written half a page. Maybe you've written one in terms of writing a book or in terms of doing something specific at that time. Even meditating, you know, did you take the time to actually meditate? What time did you do it? And for that to happen, you have to have your habit choice, your activity choice, your goal choice attainable. So it has to be reasonable. It has to be achievable. So that is the A, which is attainable and SMART. And then it has to be realistic, which is like attainable. So it has not to be something fantastic right away. So just a simple thing. And then T in SMART is when do you start time-wise? It's very important to have a definite time. So time is very important. And also focus on how long and how much you want to achieve in time, in that particular time. And so, you know, some people say we can use also the acronym SMARTER, and you add an E and an R at the end, which is it has to be ethical, and does it correspond to your values? You know, of course, it has to be something positive, something ethical, something that corresponds to your values. And again, the R, the additional R in SMARTER, is that put yourself a goal how to reevaluate when you will be reevaluating whether you have succeeded or not in your habit and in your achieving the goal. So these values are very important, and they lead us to another aspect again, which is similar, which I'd like to share with you, and even a little bit comment on the super you. We call it super you because we said this is the you that knows, that is the wave and the ocean at the same time, and Brahman consciousness knows that there's everything. But we can play also with something that commonly has been used in this acronym of super, and we're adding it to you. So S in super will be based on smarter, let's say, which means specific, measurable, attainable, that is realistic, that is time-bound, that you can think of it as something according to your values, it's ethical, and you can reevaluate it. So that's the S. The U in super is that it's unique. It's unique for you also. This is very important. You're doing it for yourself, and that is very important. So think of it as something unique for yourself. And another value that comes in super, which is very important even for the psychology, for the feeling, and for how the brain works, is the P value. P is for positive. Formulate your goal and the habit you want to achieve in a positive way, which means don't say, I don't want to eat a lot. That is a negative aspect. And in our brain, there are two values. There is one part of our brain which is protective, which is there to maintain us, protects us from things, which thinks of negative things, you know, don't do that, don't do this because it's like this. Protect yourself from, you know, cold, protect yourself from harm, and it's critical about everything. But there is one part of us that wants to give us joy and pleasure and happiness and fulfillment. And this part of us, which is very real inside of us, even scientifically, we kind of know where it is in the brain, but I don't want to bother you with that. That part only thinks of positive things. So if you say, don't do that, it will think of that. It will not think of don't do. So if you say, I don't want to eat, it will think eat, because eat is good, and it will take that. And so that value is very important. Think of your goal in a positive way. For example, you don't say, I don't want to eat. I want to eat healthy. I want to feel good in my body. I want to achieve this. I would like to do that. That is positive. I want to feel good with myself. And like that, all these positive values is very important. You know, there is an example that's usually taken. If I tell you, don't think of a blue elephant. Now, you'll first think about the blue elephant, and then it's very difficult for the brain to realize what I don't have to think about. So make your goals positive. It's very important. And in super, you know, the E stands for many things. It can stand for ecological, we can say, which means it's internally in accordance with your values and with your ideas and ethical and all of that, but also externally that it is something positive for whoever is in your environment and the conditions in which you are. And then the R in super is, again, it is reachable, it is achievable, and it can be reached, and you have to know how you want to achieve it and how you want to have it. Now, for the U, I just added, again, are you doing this for yourself? It's very important that it's very personal. You're doing this for yourself, and it is under your control. And otherwise, we can say for you that Y is for yes, I can do it, so believe in it. And O is you're open to the change, you're open to the idea. And U is to know that the possibilities are unbounded, unrestricted, unlimited. And these are the values that are very important. Now, in all of this, there are specific techniques and that can help to add to this. Once you have defined your goal, you have known what bad habit you want to get rid of, you have applied the smarter and the super U value as we discussed it, but we need a little bit more techniques. And in the super U habits program that is done by the consciousness advisors, there are 10 hacks that are offered, 10 techniques, 10 little hints that are very important, that some of them we have discussed, but I'll summarize them, and then we'll ask also our great team that is working on the Super You habits if they like to add some points, and then we take some questions. So I'll just mention the hacks quickly, and they'll mention Miriam, who is a great leader in this program also, might want to mention more. I'll welcome her to do that. But I'll mention those specific values so that you know them and you can do them. So first, we've said many times and repeated, become aware of your habit and become aware also of the habit loops, what they call, where there is a trigger, you see something and that makes you want to start something, and then you go into that behavior, and that is a routine, and then there is the reward, and then it gets repetitive and it gets established as a habit. So be aware of that. And then instead of thinking about what you want to do, think of how you would want to become. Think of the results of your action. Think of, as we've said, take yourself in time and see yourself achieving those values. It's very important. And then be confident that you can change. Remove that belief that it cannot be done. And take time for your response. Keep yourself a distance. So whenever you are finding a trigger in the environment that gets you into the bad habit, take a time to take a distance from it. And in terms of good habits, what is very important oftentimes is to start, decide to start, and not go by your moods. Because oftentimes you feel, I'm tired, I can't do this, this is a big job. Let's say you have a homework to do or something to achieve, and then the starting point is difficult. If you don't go by your mood of I'm tired and this, and decide I'm going to start, and you actually start, you find that it rolls by itself. It goes on by itself, and it becomes something positive and encouraging, and you get reinforced. Particularly if you don't put a huge task in front of you. Let's say instead of working 3 hours or 2 hours, divide it into short periods of time, and that will help you a lot. And very important is to stop being negative about others, about even your task, and making everything awful and impossible, and say you can do it. Have a mindset that is adopting proper motivation strategies and working in long-term vision and seeing the strategy over long term. And one more thing, a few more things we have in this program of Super You is to connect habits one with the other, or things that we do normally that are healthy with something else. And the example often is, you brush your teeth, and when you brush your teeth, you realize what you're going to do after that. You're going to sit and practice transcendental meditation. And like that, for example, you can connect this to something. You don't floss your teeth, for example, and you want to do it. That's a good habit. So instead of saying, I have to floss my teeth every day and all of that, you can say, maybe I floss my teeth on Fridays at least. F for Friday, F for flossing. And so that becomes a connection with something intuitively that you would say, okay, every Friday I'm going to floss my teeth. And then at least you're doing it once a week. And then you start adding it up and stacking things like that as you go along. So there is something they call apply temptation bundling, which is temptation bundling combines something that you want to do with something that you need to do. So for example, personally, I have to be a lot on the phone. And when I don't have to sit in front of the camera, because otherwise I'm sitting all day and it's very unhealthy, I got the habit that whenever I'm on the phone, I walk. So now even in the family, even my children, now they got the habit, then when they are talking on the phone, I can see them walking around like I usually do. So you can connect things like that. You know, you can be watching a movie and you say, okay, when I watch the movie, I'll do a little bit of exercise. So you can do these tricks that help a lot to connect. And one very important aspect is to be accountable, to feel accountable. For example, write your goal on a piece of paper. Write your habit you want to achieve on a piece of paper. Put it somewhere very visible. Or tell your friends about it. Have support from your friends. So they check on you and you check on them. And every day you have this reinforcement and feeling that, okay, I'm taking responsibility, I can do it. And you'll be able to do it much, much easier. So these are some general points, some specific points. And it's very important to remember that we need to maintain it. There is maintenance that is needed. And for that, there is a need for commitment, a need for consistency, as I said, accountability, and to have a momentum. Momentum builds up and gives you strength when you do it, and then you do it again, you have more confidence, and you do it again, and you have more confidence, and that gives momentum and is getting you closer to the goal. So these are some of the points. There is a lot we can do, and there is this amazing course, amazing thing that the Super You Habits offers. And I really strongly encourage you to go through those. So I'm asking Miriam now if she likes to say something. And I was told we can do up to 90 minutes. So I still have few minutes more that we can maybe experience something or review some of the slides. But Miriam, if you're available, please go ahead and inspire us even more.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nader. This was such a joy to hear it all again, because of course we've been connecting with you on it, but it's beautiful to hear your wholeness there. In terms of the Super You Habits program, so yes, we've been working on this with Dr. Nader, with other experts like Keith and Ted Wallace, with Heather Evans, and myself for a while last year. And, you know, the 10 hacks we talked about is a lot of them are at that level, what Dr. Nader was describing at the surface level of the ocean, the waves. And as we said, like, as you said, like moving an iceberg, it's very important that we push the iceberg from the top of the ocean. But if we can start pushing from the deeper levels of the ocean, from our deeper level of consciousness at the same time, that is a lot more powerful, and that makes it more easy and more fun. And that's why we designed this program, to really go into not just those basic conscious level approaches, but really bring, you know, a consciousness-based approach to habit change, which was quite revolutionary. It doesn't really exist. And so we tested it with a test group last year, and people described it as life-changing, revolutionary. They came up with testimonials like, I've been trying to exercise for 20 years and finally I can do it. So it's been very fulfilling to see the power of this. And the aspects that are brought in on top of course, some of these hacks that were mentioned today. The one I wanted to highlight is Ayurveda, which we go very deeply into, and it relates to mind-body coordination, because as we know, right, we're hangry, we're kind of hungry, and that makes us angry. Our mind and our body are very connected. And sometimes it's easier when our mind is stuck on something, because of course, habit change is a mental process. Sometimes when our mind is stuck, we can bring in the level of the body and help from that level to unstuck it, like a door that's locked and somebody gives you the key. And so with the 10 weeks, we start by really identifying your mind-body type, because these recommendations are different for different types. And then throughout the 10 weeks, we will apply all these hacks to, well, what does it mean if you're Vata mind-body type? And what does it mean if you're Pitta? And what does it mean if you're Kapha? And we keep bringing these additional information from the deeper level of mind-body connection of how can you bring your body to the rescue when your mind gets a bit, stuck in place. And so the other aspect is kind of the collective consciousness, the group consciousness that gets built, just being in the presence of other people who are trying to do the same thing. It creates a momentum. And so we allocate a buddy and you get a learning circle to apply and to support each other daily with your journey over 10 weeks. So it's been a real privilege to work on this and to really see how this is changing lives. And as we know, habits connect to all kinds of health situations. So we're really feeling like we are changing, helping people live longer, healthier, better, and reach their higher goals of enlightenment. So it's been a real joy. Very practically, I know people were asking on the chat for the link. So Louise has a slide. So if you're interested in the program, you can just go to superyouhabits.com. And we even made a special discount for this group. So CIA stands for consciousness is all there is. So CIA 100 will give you $100 off. We have one program starting next week, actually, February 21st. So the registrations for that will close on Sunday, on the 18th. So if you'd like to join that program, then make sure you register before the 18th. If not, we have the next program starts on April 8th. So that gives you more time, and you can find all the information, or if you have questions, you can email superyouhabits@oneconsciousness.org, which I will ask our dear Louise to put in the chat for you. I hope that clarifies. And of course, any questions, I'm also here to help.
Thank you so much, Miriam and Dr. Nader. It's very exciting that we actually have practical means to be able to change habits that are not useful and to develop habits that are useful. And one of the things that Dr. Nader, you referenced, and I just wanted to highlight, is that I think all of us who've been meditating for some time have noticed that by transcending on a regular basis, meditating regularly twice a day, that these things that appear to be on the surface become incredibly much more powerful, right? It may seem we're doing something on the surface, but what we're bringing is the depth of the ocean to that change, so that the change in behavior happens more quickly, more easily, more effortlessly. And to me, that's the real power of what you presented today, is that not only do we have, as you said, these tricks or tools or techniques, but we have the power, the depth of the ocean through transcendence that allows those things to manifest so quickly and easily. So I think now, Dr. Nader, if you'd like to take questions, there are some questions for Miriam and Dr. Nader that have come up. One, Annette was asking, Dr. Nader, is there a way for reward or celebration that in this model is that useful for making progress toward new behaviors?
Yes, we should get the reward from our activity. If we have a good habit, it will itself reward us of feeling better, of getting good. And we can reward each other through the support from each other, which is very important. We can set up these long-term rewards. Is long-term, but if we make the steps short steps and have time for re-evaluation, as we have seen in Smarter and Super, that then can allow us to be rewarding ourselves through our awareness of improving and our awareness of feeling that we are achieving something towards the future. Or maybe I didn't get the full question.
No, I think that's exactly the point. Is that I think if I understood what you're saying, is that we build in rewards. There is a reward from the behavior itself. I guess the follow-up question would be: is there a reward to consciously a value to consciously creating a reward or a celebration as you change the behavior?
Yeah, that's also an important point. Like give yourself something that you like, that is positive, of course, that is healthy. And that is a reinforcement process that can also happen. give yourself a hug, or put some money in the box so that you can buy something beautiful, or that you can take a course that is more advanced. Every time you do this, yeah, rewards are also important, but the process itself should bring its own reward.
Absolutely. So it's a number of people have asked, will there be a recording? I just want to say that there will be an email sent out in the next 24 hours with the link and your login information to be able to access the recording of this webinar and each of the webinars as they come up. Dr. Nader, Aditi Torres asked, judging things, situations, circumstances, and people is not a very good habit. It can even be counterproductive. Is there a way for us to go about changing this abstract, impulsive habit of judging others?
Yes, we can. You can make it in the same way. Make it specific. That is, many asked about the S in super. The S in super is for smarter, but is also for specific. So make it specific that next time you are judging somebody, have the impulse of judging somebody, try to see what you can learn from their off behavior, maybe. Try to see how you can be more compassionate, how you can see things in a different way, that you can understand people from their perspective rather than your perspective. See why they are doing what they are doing. Maybe they're suffering from something. Maybe there is something that is beyond their control. And so put these goals, and then every time you have it, you can say, well, I succeeded in this, and that's the reevaluation value. So there are all these habits, of course, the habits of jealousy, habits of anger, habits of judgment, which are on the emotional level, on the feeling level, but also on the cognition level, because you are intellectually analyzing it. And that also can be wasting your energy. So you see it as a negative something. And whenever there is a habit like that, see how you can change it into something that's positive, which means you learn about people, about their things, how they are, you ask them how they feel, you ask something positive, something compassionate, and maybe you will find, most likely you will find that you yourself learn and grow by having the positive attitude.
Beautiful. And Miriam, did you also want to comment on this question?
If that would be okay, yes, because this question is the perfect example of what we were talking about with mind-body connection as well. So everything Dr. Nader described is the perfect way to tackle this mental issue from the mental side. And sometimes that can also be hard. And then we can go look at, well, is there something we can do at the physical level? And one example is if we get pitta imbalanced. Pitta is one of the values in Ayurveda, one of the doshas. If we get pitta imbalanced, and everything we do physically will impact whether we are pitta imbalanced or not. But if we have too much of it, we can become perfectionistic in ourselves, towards ourselves, and towards others. And sometimes if we can then do physical things, drink cold water, make sure we don't never get hungry, things like this to reduce our pitta when we feel that perfectionism is coming up, that can then help our mental side. Just like when we're hangry, it's also a pitta value, hunger and anger. We can try to tell ourselves, don't be angry, don't be angry. But if we can just eat and not be hungry, sometimes that is a very complementary way to help us reduce that emotion. And so I just wanted to bring this point because it was the perfect question for it.
And Dr.
It illustrates this ABC value, ABCS, and how they are actually intimately connected, which means the affect, the emotion, the feeling, the behavior, the cognition, and the sensations, the physical sensation, physical needs like hunger or pain or like that, they actually influence each other. They are just different facets of a situation. And so that's beautifully expressed, Miriam.
And And Dr. Nader, with your permission, as long as we're talking about Maharishi Ayurveda, we have a great expert in Maharishi Ayurveda who's been sitting, listening, and patiently, who's been very involved with you and Miriam in the development of the Super You Habits program. I wonder if I could introduce Dr. Keith Wallace, the first president of Maharishi International University, did some of the very first research demonstrating the effectiveness of transcendental meditation, and who has published a recent book that's just come out on Maharishi Ayurveda. And Dr. Wallace, thank you so much for being with us and for lending your knowledge and your expertise to this very powerful program in changing habits.
Well, first, let me correct the situation here. I'm the student, Dr. Nader is the teacher. He knows so much more about Maharishi Ayurveda than I do, so he is the expert. I very much enjoyed listening to his talk. I thought it was brilliant. I really, I think of the super habit. It's sort of, you do that and all other habits become easy. So exactly what he said in the beginning, that it's the expansion of the you, that cosmic you, that really makes everything easy. And I loved also what he said about these two parts to the brain, because I think that sums up our world beautifully. There's a protective part, which is the whole stress circuit, cortisol, fight or flight, which most of the world is in all the time. And it just destroys the brain. It basically makes it hard to do anything. And a lot of bad habits are just there to numb the pain from that. Or you take a positive approach. And that is really Ayurveda. Start small, start simple. And just as he said, replace bad habits with good ones. That is the key to everything. And in that very beautiful way of, having that excellent mindset, and then providing a toolkit. And that's really what this program does. It gives you a toolkit on how to change habits. We teach it to the first year students at MIU. We don't tell them to meditate regularly. We just teach them how to form good habits. And by the end of the 2 weeks, all they're talking about is how they can apply their techniques to becoming regular in meditation. So it's really a program of empowering people, as Dr. Nader said. That's the key to everything. So I loved this lecture. I loved everything Dr. Nader said. I thought it was brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wallace. And Dr. Nader, there was a question from Victoria. Do you recommend this program to prepare for TTC?
Yes, it's a program for every aspect of life requiring our behavior to be conducive to attain the higher goals. So in preparation for teacher training course, you can apply these habits to learn, how you do an intro lecture, and you have to apply that and use that time for time again. So, structure your timing for that and for learning and all of this, of course, that would be great. And I want to thank Dr. Wallace. He's more than, just a great scientist for me. He's a friend and a colleague. We work together so much. He's brilliant. I admire him and his work.
Thank you very much. And Ted's not here today, but he would also agree with me that some of the greatest and most magnificent moments in our life was with you in working for Maharishi and watching just how much Maharishi loved you so much, how he valued you. That to me was just such pleasure. You really brought fulfillment to Maharishi in everything you did, and we are so grateful for that. Thank you.
Beautiful. So I don't know if you're willing to take one more question, Dr. Nader. I mean, there's a number, but there's one that relates to what you were talking about earlier, which is how would you define the division between evaluating and judging? At what point does evaluation becomes judgment? Or because we generally think evaluation is a good thing, judging not so good. So where's the dividing line?
Yeah, again, you said it, evaluating is when you look at something to see what is it to learn from it, what is it that we can change in it or adjust it. And when you judge something, you are saying bad and good and not so good. And so you are putting a value judgment, if you like, on it. And that value judgment sometimes is narrow in perspective, which means you're putting and projecting your own values. Sometimes you are self-righteous, as we say. You feel you are right and others are wrong. And you don't give the time to evaluate and see maybe something you have to change in yourself, in your understanding. You're not open to that. So whenever there is a narrow perspective and prejudice and already preconceived ideas about a situation, we are likely to be more judgmental. Whenever we come to a situation with open mind, unbounded feelings, desire to see what is there that we can learn from, whether positive or negative, then it's more like evaluation.
Beautiful. So we are now at the 90-minute point. There are more questions, but did you want to conclude or have some concluding remarks, Dr. Nader, as we close?
We can have both. We can conclude, or if you like, everyone who has been
Yes.
attending and has to leave is, welcome to leave. I don't
Okay.
know if others, and you particularly, Chris,
Oh,
have some
it's
time.
fine. No,
Then
we
we
have
can
time.
answer a few questions and keep it in the record.
Okay.
So we can assume that the concluding remarks are, thank you for listening. Thank you for participating in this knowledge and this journey of life. What we learned from Rishi Mahesh Yogi as a founder of the program is very profound and complete, and it can make life better for everyone. Dr. Wallace was a champion in showing that the first aspects of how life can be improved with transcendental meditation. So we are very honored to have him with us. And so this journey continues, and the Consciousness Advisor program is not just to remove some stress here and there, but it's really a profound modification of habits and behavior and thinking and feeling and understanding from a very natural level, very spontaneous level of awakening within ourselves the true reality of who we are and becoming a super you, which is an enlightened individual. And it's a journey that is beautiful and can accompany everyone throughout life until full enlightenment is achieved. And we are very grateful for all those who participate, for those who join. Thank you, Chris, yourself, for organizing and structuring and inspiring, and the entire, of course, Consciousness Advisor team.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Nader. And as Dr. Nader has said, if I understand correctly, he's generously offered to answer a few more questions, which will continue in just a few moments. I just want to ask Louise to put up the slide to invite all of you to share with your friends the link to purchase the pre-order package with Dr. Nader so others can participate in this wonderful webinar series. We have 5 more webinars, and anyone who enrolls in the program now will have access to this recording as well. Please feel free to share the coupon code that will give a $20 discount on the pre-order package. So that the cost is just $29.95 rather than $49.95. And this package, as I'm sure all of you know by now, includes a copy of Dr. Nader's book when it's released, as well as a number of wonderful gifts, including an hour session with a certified consciousness advisor, the program that Miriam and her husband oversee. So please feel free to share this link and the coupon code with everyone and anyone. And now I'll just pose a few of the questions that are still remaining in the chat. So Diana asked Dr. Nader, I have a question about the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 33. And I'm assuming that she's referring to Maharshi's commentary, but I'm not certain about that. She said in chapter 2, verse 33, in the first paragraph, there is the term, quote, positive sin, unquote, in the English edition. That sounds like an oxymoron, a contradiction in terms. Could you please clarify that?
I'll have to read it again. I don't.
Yeah, the
To see,
context is important, I think, huh?
yeah, yeah, contextually what it means. It might, uh, it might allude to something where you have to deconstruct something, but it's in the positive direction.
Mhm.
That's how I see it. For example, we used to say, of course, there is the constructive values of life, and there is the maintenance value of life, and there is the deconstruction value. So when one goes through a process of constructing, but in a not creative way, not evolutionary way, sometimes you have to deconstruct that in order to be able to move forward. So when you use maybe a medicine that has an effect on bacteria and that destroys the bacteria, so destroying is negative, destroying is killing the bacterium, which is horrible in terms of life sustenance. But if the bacteria is out of balance and is going to kill you as a higher individual, then when your immune system acts on it and destroys it, that's a sin, which is positive. That's killing something, killing life, but in a positive way. So, destroying a bacteria or containing a bacterial growth. So whatever is out of balance often has to be readjusted. And it's still, killing is sin. But in this particular case, as the example, it has some protective value.
Wonderful, beautiful answer. These three values that I know you've talked about in the past, creation, maintenance, and destruction. The destructive value also has its positive aspect because you can't create something new without destroying something that was existing before that wasn't useful. So beautiful. Diana also asked, can the Super U program address things like epigenetic stresses that are so deep in order to improve health? I'm not quite sure what she's referring to, but that was her question.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Wallace has been interested in epigenetics and all that. He's been also interested very much in bacteria and and the balance of the the bacteria and the physiology. But we know more and more that proper behavior, proper exposure to environment, proper balance of activity of the physiology has an effect on how the DNA manifests itself and which parts are enhanced and other parts are subdued and sometimes even changed and transformed. And that is really, yes, you can, by changing habits, we know you're changing the way the nervous system works. There is this plasticity that adjusts itself. And that is due to, in fact, ultimately, it has an impact on the DNA because what kind of proteins are expressed, what kind of mRNA creates what kind of enzyme, which creates what kind of protein, which creates what kinds of connections between, neurotransmitters and neuroreceptors that are deconstructed or reconstructed is a direct effect from what we do and the environment on the DNA. And so these are epigenetic factors that are powerful.
Dr. Wallace, did you want to comment at all?
I think what Dr. Nader said was perfect. I mean, habits, epigenetics is habits. They're the same thing. If you have a habit, it acts on your DNA and causes certain genes to be expressed and others to be quieted down. I've heard this one funny term they use, they call it nutrient sensing pathways. And all it means is food is medicine. So this is something, which Ayurveda knew for thousands of years, that the food you eat is epigenetic. There are these nutrient sensing pathways, and the food you eat change them. So food is medicine. It all comes down to Ayurveda, very simple expressions. I think Dr. Nader said it beautifully.
Wonderful, thank you.
If you like, I can share. I have the research here for TM and epigenetics. So it really demonstrates this point, if that's helpful, that, here you see the expression of genes, and this was with transcendental meditation, so that there's a number of genes that are involved in cardiovascular disease, and they get suppressed with TM. And then there's a number of genes that are involved with suppressing tumors, and they are increased. Their expression is increased with TM. So this is the non-meditating group and the meditating group, just as an indication that, yes, habits like TM, absolutely scientifically shown, improve gene expression. And there's also research on other habits really impacting how certain genes express itself. So.
Fascinating. Great. Dr. Nader, Ian asked, do we not need both protective and creative habits? Do they not each have their positive aspect?
Absolutely. The answer is yes, absolutely, of course. Of course, that's why these parts of the brain exist, You want to protect yourself, you want to be reasonable, you want to be right, and you want to balance all of these aspects. In fact, the inner part, which is the positive part, the holistic part, actually also participates in bad habits, because when you get into the comfort and the immediate reward and all of that, it's also that part that needs to be addressed. And that is why you cannot change things from the surface level alone. In fact, to modify certain kinds of habits, you have to really learn to transcend, learn to settle down, and to go deep within yourself, so that you have access to that part which is there enjoying and looking for comfort and short-term also gratification, and talk to it and let it know that there is a bigger value of gratification. So there is a higher value, and then it will actually change. So these hacks and tricks and things we do help a lot, but again, as Chris emphasized and Keith also said, and of course Miriam, if to transcend, to go deeper, is the ability to awaken within ourselves the highest purpose, the highest values, and to be in tune with the evolutionary power of natural law. And that is ultimately always important in being able to modify habits in the right direction in the fastest possible way.
Yeah. That comment relates directly to Yvonne's comment in the chat. She says, since I started TM, I began to eliminate bad habits one by one. I didn't even realize it at first. My desires changed. Right?
Beautiful. Greater awareness, always greater consciousness makes you see the greater good and the long-term good.
Right. There are, and I'll just read a few of these. There are a number of very positive comments about your presentation tonight, today, Dr. Nader. Monique said, amazing, inspiring, empowering, elevating. What a fabulous time we had together with deep appreciation. Rose said, so grateful for Dr. Nader. Lorraine said, thank you so much for this course. Wonderful presentation. Thank you, Dr. Nader, for sharing your wisdom in so little time. I've learned so much. Thank you so much for such a wonderful session. Habit changing has already begun. And so let's see. So Ian asked another question. He said, how do we resist bad habits which are part of the culture that we live in? In other words, cultural conditioning, so to speak. Right?
Yeah, this is part of what we said, taking one's life in one's hand, empowering oneself and believing we can change. And so, there are habits that we can blame on others. And if we don't make the decision to take responsibility and be accountable, in spite of social pressure, people do things. You see kids starting to smoke because their friends smoke and they want to show they are like adults and like that. So there is this whole interplay of values, and it's by going to the self rather than being subject to the outer values, to the surface values. And that's why I presented those values of surface, superficial, deeper and deeper levels of awareness, and how one is anchored in oneself, which means anchored in the field of pure being, which is most evolutionary, rather than anchored in surface values that can be negative. Now, surface values and cultural values can be also positive, of course, and can be supportive. But if they are like peer pressure and condition us to some negativity, what we do is follow these a few aspects, or follow the course of the Super You habits, and we will see that it becomes easy to be able to overcome even the peer pressure and convince the others and get them to be in the right direction. Also, take them in and show that one can have the strength to look long term and have good goals and great habits.
Wonderful. Dr. Nader, An asked, what if my goal is actually to be less goal oriented in order to be able to live in the flow of life? He says, this life happens while you're busy making other plans. So what if you're really trying to be more in flow and less trying to focus on this goal and that goal? How does that affect things?
Yeah, this is a goal in itself. So, we can call it a goal of being less pitta maybe value, because this is also part of our human nature. Every one of us is different, and there are different ways we deal with reality based on our constitution and on our habits, of course, on our diet, on our times of the day and the season, expectations, perfectionism or not, as Miriam alluded to. And all of this is just simply follow the simple instructions, define what it is that you are like wanting to be goal-less, and see what implication it has on you in terms of feeling happy, feeling good, and in terms of being less restricted. So maybe in many times, it's not that you really want to be goal-less or higher goal-less, is you want to be less attached to the results of action, to want to be less bound by the value. It's creating for you some, excess perfectionism. And so by just changing the way you approach the goal, rather than changing the fact of having a goal. So these are fine things. So that's why you want to define it in a positive way. I want to reach the goal without having to over stress about it or to feel pressured by it. How would I do that? So you become specific and you become, positive about it, and you define actions or times and things that you want to do in order to achieve that, and then you do it in a small parts, and then reevaluate and adjust. And also, sometimes we should be very compassionate with ourselves and patient. Sometimes it doesn't work the first time, then you adjust, you try the second time, keep trying, and then you will get into it.
It's such a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Nader. It reminds me of this point from the Bhagavad Gita that we have control over action alone, never over the results of action, right? And that, as you pointed out, what causes us to suffer, to be unhappy, is our attachment to getting a particular result, right? And if we can dissolve the attachment, then we can have the joy of whatever the result may be from the actions that we give. Thank you so much for that great answer. Paulo asks, do you feel that people, when acting out relatively bad habits, are sometimes in a sort of hypnotic or unaware state, like when they do things again and again and again compulsively?
Yes, even in the Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned that some ruler who is doing the wrong thing, and he says, I know what is right, but I cannot do it. And so you see, if we go deep into the knowledge of the wisdom of the Gita and others, we find all of cognitive behavioral therapy and behavior modification. They're all there. It's really all there. And so this is exactly why the person can't do it, because there is something deeper in them and their subconscious that makes them work like an automatic machine and they don't control it. And believe it or not, what's amazing is that this is very, very prevalent in terms of decision making and people doing things. They think they have decided and they are conscious of it, but actually it's some subconscious value that is making them do this. Now you can say it's a hypnotic state, which in some case, yes, it is, but without having to go to hypnosis and hypnotic state, it's that part of our brain which finds logic and purpose and goal in doing certain things for whatever reason that has accumulated. And then when one realizes, the higher conscious level realizes, well, this is not right, they can't stop it because the habit is there from this deep level. In certain cases, it's really very essential that people transcend and go deeper. That's how they get cleared up from these values. And therefore, this deep relaxation is very important. In fact, if time had allowed, I wanted to take you all through a process of all of us relaxing, maybe meditating a little and then relaxing, and then projecting the habit that we want to change into what new habit we want to have. And that is a deeper level of changing habits. So whenever you are trying to change habits, don't do it when you are stressed and tired. Take your time. That's why the cognitive part is important. Take your time to analyze it carefully, and then close your eyes, go back in time and see yourself. What would have happened? What would I be like if I had not done that? Or what would I be like if I have done this positive thing? And then going to the future, you can say, what would be the result when I do this thing? What would be the result when I apply this positive habit? And that will convince the inner values that, yeah, because when you see in the future, you are projecting something that is a little bit beyond that critical thinking value, protective value, because it's protecting right now. It doesn't know how to think on the future. When it thinks in the future, you take it off a little bit offline. And that is what helps offline to say, well, yeah, I would have something fantastic if I did this. And if, this is the positive outcome, will be so great. And then that's how you convince yourself to do the right thing.
Great. So a few more positive comments. Thank you so much. So practical for our life journey. Cheryl said, my bad habits were triggered by a trauma. Thank you so very much. This has been so deeply valuable. And Rehab had a question. asking, how can we identify the subconscious trigger that is behind our bad habits, since it's easier to change a habit if we're aware of the situation that triggered it?
Sometimes it's possible by just resting and particularly by meditating, transcending. And then during transcendental meditation, we say don't analyze. And so that is very important because the stress can be released without analyzing it intellectually. Because when you're analyzing intellectually, it's that part again that is analyzing, that is trying to get itself into the picture, which usually is, to protect you, and it's don't do this, do that, and why get rid of this, don't get rid of that. And so you have to absolutely let go and transcend, and then the stress gets automatically released in a very natural way. And so that's how we can get rid of these deep values without even knowing their origin. The other thing is that oftentimes different stresses and different components come together to create a certain behavior. So it's a repetition of factors that are maybe not just one event or one thing happened and then you got there, but a combination of emotions, of feelings, of sensations, of cognition from different angles that kind of come together and create that. And if you want to untangle them, it's kind of almost impossible because it's not one factor, but a combination of factors. So trying to go to the cause in that case is really not necessary. It's just to identify what is the habit and how it is happening, and identify how and what you want to replace and how you want it to happen, and taking it in these steps with smarter and super and like that. And you, because you means yes, I can do it. And O is open, I'm open to possibilities. And the Y is I'm unbounded, infinite, unlimited. And so the super you takes you there without having to analyze the cause, the real cause.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Nader. I think I see one more question before
Yeah,
that.
whatever it is, we'll take it as the last question.
Okay, great. Just a comment, Claudette said, all gratitude for this amazing webinar, how deep it is and already transforming by attending it. A blessing for everyone and for the world. And the last question that I see here is that, and then one last comment, but is it valuable to share my plan with friends and family to get their input if I'm thinking about goals?
Yeah, beautiful. Sure, sure. And that's part of accountability, part of social support. So yes, feel good, and you have to judge yourself. What kind of personal things or intimate thing or whatever your relation is to others. But find somebody that you are feeling good with who can be supportive, and share that with them, and get them to be your accountable, accounting to the person to whom you'll be accountable in a sense, and so they can encourage you. It's one of the 10 hacks, I think, one of the last ones that are taught in this Super You Habits program.
Yeah, it's somehow always more effective to have someone that you're accountable to than trying to be accountable to yourself, right?
Yes, right.
And I just wanted to share this comment from Delta. I think it expresses what many of us on this call feel. She said, "This was the best investment of time I have spent in a very long time. Thank you." So I think Louise has the date of our next webinar, which is March 27th. We'll be focused then. Dr. Nader will be talking about enhancing relationships. I just do want to mention that it will still be at 1 p.m. U.S. Central Time, but for those in Europe, it will be 1 hour earlier at 7 p.m. rather than 8 p.m. as tonight, because the daylight savings time starts at a different time. So it'll be 1 p.m. in the US Central Time, 7 p.m. Central European Time. And we look forward to being with you all then. Again, Dr. Nader, thank you on behalf of all of us. Also, Miriam, Dr. Wallace, thank you for being here with us and sharing your wisdom. We are, as always, Dr. Nader, deeply grateful.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Jay Kradev.
Jay.
Bye.